Kei'Mani Latigue was just days away from turning 14 when her body was discovered in an abandoned home in Toledo, Ohio on March the 24th, 2025. At the time, Kei'Mani had been staying with her grandmother and legal guardian, Dorothy Latigue. On March the 16th, 2025, Dorothy left for an overnight work shift, leaving Kei'Mani at home alone. When Dorothy returned the next morning on March the 17th, she immediately noticed something wasn't right. The door was open, Kei'Mani's glasses were left behind, her PJs were on the floor, and her underwear was visible. Dorothy knew something was wrong. Dorothy reached out to Kei'Mani's school, but they confirmed that Kei'Mani was not present at school. Despite Dorothy arriving home and finding the house in disarray, and despite Kei'Mani not being at school, no Amber Alert was issued for Kei'Mani. Authorities claimed that they had received conflicting stories about if Kei'Mani was a runaway, which meant her disappearance did not meet the criteria to issue an Amber Alert. Now, at the center of this heartbreaking case is Darnell Jones, who presented himself as a concerned father to both the media and authorities. While Dorothy received conflicting information about if Darnell was Kei'Mani's biological father, and despite Darnell's lengthy criminal history, Dorothy continued to allow Kei'Mani and Darnell to be around one another, as Dorothy claims that Darnell was more involved than Kei'Mani's own biological mother. Now, as the investigation continued, Darnell's story started to fall apart. Darnell initially told authorities that Kei'Mani called him during the night and said that she was afraid to be at home alone because someone was attempting to break in. Now, police used surveillance footage, witness statements, and phone records to show that his statement didn't add up. On March the 23rd, an arrest warrant was issued for Darnell, but before he could be apprehended, he fled Toledo and went to Columbus. Now, authorities tracked him down on March the 25th, where he attempted to fire at officers from inside his sweatshirt. Now, there has been online speculation about Darnell's condition. Although authorities returned gunfire and critically injured Darnell, authorities have not confirmed if Darnell Jones is paralyzed. What our authorities have confirmed is that Darnell Jones is being treated in the medical ward at the jail and is under close surveillance. Now, according to an indictment that has been filed, Darnell Jones admitted that on or about March the 17th through March the 18th, he purposely and with prior calculation caused the death of Kei'Mani Latigue. Darnell confessed that he removed Kei'Mani involuntarily from Dorothy's home and dragged her to the abandoned home where he ultimately took Kei'Mani's life. However, what authorities have said is that although Darnell Jones has confessed to involuntarily removing Kei'Mani's from her grandmother's house and dragging her to this abandoned house, what has not been provided to the authorities at this point is where the SA against Kei'Mani
about this. I feel like, so real quick, because I was just thinking about this. I feel like my family might definitely be on some Jerry Springer type shit, right? And feel free to ask me questions because I'm still trying to figure it out, and maybe we can figure it out together, right? Okay, so my mother's baby daddy married my grandma, right? So if he's my stepdad and he married my grandma, that makes my grandma my stepmom, right? And if my grandma is my stepmom, that makes my mom my stepsister. And if my mom is my stepsister as well as my mom, wouldn't that also make her my kid's auntie as well as their grandma? About this, I feel like, so real quick, because I was
his record, she truly thought Jones had stepped up to be a father for her, despite not even being her biological dad.
It was told to me that he was her biological father. However, her biological mother has told me on several occasions that he is not. So I don't know what to believe, but I know that he was present. He's been more present than the biological mom. And I feel deceived. Like, you played for so long in my face like you was her dad, like you really had her best interests at heart.
They mentioned Darnell Jones. Neither identified him as a father of the child, and neither said that he was a support for the child or the father. And again, none of the referral sources nor the collateral sources we spoke with ever mentioned a father nor mentioned Darnell Jones. No record exists which establishes paternity of Kimani, not with Darnell Jones nor with any other person. There was, back in 2011, an alleged father who was excluded by genetic testing. Subsequent to that, though, there has been no efforts that we can discover to identify a father of Kimani.
And I feel like there's a time and place to say things, and when someone's grieving, that's the wrong thing. There's certain things you just shouldn't say. You can have your speculations, you can have your opinions, but sometimes that doesn't even matter. There's people that have kids and act like they never cussed at a child before, act like they never yelled at a child before. Everybody is just so perfect when it's not them. That's what I don't like. Everyone in the groups and everyone that's watching and everyone that's viewing and everyone that's supporting act like they never did nothing before.
Okay, so there's a major update here. The Toledo Prosecutor's Office is not happy that someone intentionally set the home on fire. The home at 1101 Miami Street, where Kei'Mani's body was found, the prosecutor's office has spoken out and said that was reckless. In addition to the prosecutor's office, Kei'Mani's aunt also spoke out in regards to this, and prosecutors have made it clear they are not happy. So drop your comments below. Were you aware of the prosecutor's office saying there was evidence there? This was an ongoing investigation. Despite Darnell Jones' confession, that home should not have been set on fire. Listen to this.
Had been set last Friday when he first appeared in court. Jones is charged with murder, abduction, and felonious assault, and it's still not clear why the charges were refiled. He is due back in court later this week. Now, as we continue on in this story tonight, we are looking into the fire that broke out at the home on Miami Street earlier, in fact, over the weekend. That is the site where 13-year-old Kei'Mani Latigue's body was found last month. And now, as you see behind me, it's a pile of rubble. Silver Barker, she had a chance to speak with Toledo Fire and Rescue and joins us now with the details of that conversation. Silver?
Yeah, Jeff, there's no word on the cause yet. However, Toledo Fire and Rescue tells me its lead investigator is looking into the situation of what caused the fire, and he tells me he's got a few leads. The house where police say Kei'Mani Latigue was murdered is now a pile of rubble. It was abandoned, and the city had fenced it off, but a fire Saturday morning forced Toledo City crews to take down what was left. Some people who saw it in flames say they're happy to see it come down.
Mixed feelings, mixed emotions. Happy to see it come down, but also prayerfully that everything that was needed, that was out of there.
Many question if this will impact the police investigation. I reached out to the Toledo Police Department. TPD says its detectives do not believe it will. However, that may not be the case for other departments. I reached out to the Lucas County Prosecutor's Office, reading in part, quote, "This act not only placed Toledo Fire and Rescue personnel in an extremely dangerous and unnecessary situation, but it also compromised a location that remains critical in an ongoing criminal investigation. This site held evidentiary value for all parties involved in the pursuit of justice, and its destruction is both reckless and troubling." I reached out to Kei'Mani's aunt, Sanika Williams. She says the fire just pushed the process faster. She feels as if people in the community were upset that the house was still standing, and as a result, she says it looks like they took matters into their own hands. And now we'll make sure to keep you updated as we're waiting to learn what caused the fire from Toledo Fire and Rescue. Now, as for the murder, I did reach out to Toledo Police regarding more suspects. Could there be more suspects in this case? However, their comment was no comment, as this is still under investigation. Reporting live in East Toledo.
The significance of this is that, of course, the abandoned home where Kimani's body was found, that home was intentionally set on fire on April the 19th. Keep in mind that Darnell Jones' confession was filed with the courts on April the 18th. A day after the confession was filed, the home was intentionally set on fire. Now, there was speculation about the possibility of other suspects, but at that time, we did not know if the investigation was still open because Darnell Jones had given a confession, or if it was closed. But what you just heard from the prosecutor's office, the statement, is that this was an ongoing criminal investigation. And whoever set that home on fire, it was reckless because it destroyed potential evidence that could be there. And in addition to that, you heard the news lady say, she posed the question to the police if there were suspects, and they declined to answer about the additional suspects other than this is an ongoing investigation. So you can make a reasonable conclusion, and you could say that the police are actively investigating and potentially considering others because it's ongoing. Just because Darnell Jones gave his confession doesn't necessarily mean that rules out the possibility of anyone else being involved. And that's what the police have said. So drop your comments below. What are your thoughts about this? Now, of course, Kei'Mani's aunt, as you heard, the news channel reached out to her and she said that she was happy about the home being destroyed. You know, others have celebrated this, but the prosecutor said, no, that was reckless. Now, something else that I do want to get into is I've seen online several times about the home where Kei'Mani's body was unfortunately discovered, was that this home potentially belonged to Dorothy's mother. However, when you go online to Lucas County, you could do a public search with this address, you type it in, the names that come up, I have it here in front of the screen. These are not affiliated with Darnell Latigue's family, at least by this search. So you see that at one point the home belonged to a rental company. The significance here is that there's been talks online from several people, including family members, that have said the home where Kei'Mani's body was found, that home at one point belonged to Dorothy's mother. Now, I'm not saying that it did or it did not, because her name could have changed. Maybe she was pursuing home ownership. But what this public record of the home ownership does not outline is who rented the home, right? Because there is a possibility that Dorothy's mother could have potentially rented the home. But what I've heard is that Dorothy's mother owned the home. But what this record shows here, this is public record. Anyone can go out there to Lucas County and you can enter it in. The home has not been owned by Darnell Latigue's mother, at least by the name that Tiara gave in her interview. So I'm putting this here for information because I think it's important, you know, when we have the ability to go out here and search the information, it's important for us to go out here and search so we can try to keep the facts straight. This message here is from Darnell Jones, and the date on here was from 2021. He said, one day I won't be able to say this, so I'll say it now. I love you. I only wish you the best in life, and I hope you win and do great things. Now, the reply in this social media message that he made here, well, the social media post, excuse me, was from Tiara, of course, Kei'Mani's biological mother. And she said, TF, you know, you cool, baby daddy, BD. Now, the significance here is that a lot of people have said, we don't know whether or not Kei'Mani is Darnell's child. Of course, you've heard from Lucas County, they say there was a DNA test that excluded another man, but they did not do a subsequent test on Darnell Jones, nor was he named. Okay. So a lot of people have pointed out that Kei'Mani's biological mom, Tiara, that she was not forthcoming. It appears that she may have been dishonest about the last time she saw Kei'Mani. in the interview that she did, she initially said that she saw Kei'Mani on March the 15th. So a lot of people were saying, oh, that was kind of odd that you hadn't seen Kei'Mani in years. And then March the 15th, you see Kei'Mani, which is the day before her grandmother goes to work. She goes missing, and Tierra gave the story. Now, when Tierra goes to court, she tells the judge something completely different. So Tierra went on the interview and said that Darnell Jones brought Kei'Mani up to Cleveland where she lived, and that her mother Dorothy wanted Kei'Mani to be home. So Dorothy called for Darnell to bring her back because for whatever reason, Dorothy wanted her to be home. But when she went to court, which was probate court, because there was a dispute about Kei'Mani, you know, the funeral services, who was going to take ownership, Kei'Mani told the judge a completely different story. So drop your comments below about this. Were you aware of this, and how does this make you feel?
Because I have a 4-year-old. She was up here with Kei'Mani for a whole week before that. My daughter's dad got permission from my mother to bring Kei'Mani to me on Saturday the 15th. That had nothing to do with no birthdays. I don't know where people keep getting that from, but that's not what I said. She came up to see me because, again, I'm paying child support. I still have my parental rights. So that was my visit. But she sat with me hours. You know what I'm saying? Because I guess my mother wanted her home before the night was over for whatever reason. But they stayed for 2 hours. We played the video game. We joked, we played. We had a good time. We had a good time.
Okay, so now listen to Dorothy Latigue and Tierra when they were in court in the probate court with the judge. Now, the significance here, like I said, is that Tierra says that Darnell brought Kei'Mani down to see her on March the 15th. The aunt went on the news and said Tierra had not been involved in Kei'Mani's life. And the last time that Tierra saw Kei'Mani was on her 11th birthday. And you remember, in response to that, Tierra did the interview that you just heard to shut down the claims from her sister of saying that she was not active in Kei'Mani's life. Well, now she goes to court, and in front of the judge, she says, well, I haven't seen her since her 11th birthday. So which do you believe? Do you believe when she went on this, on the internet and said that she saw Kei'Mani just a day before she was last seen, that Darnell brought Kei'Mani to Cleveland? Because a lot of people were speaking out about that. And then why be dishonest about that? If you hadn't saw your daughter since the 11th birthday, why put that information out there during an active criminal investigation? Now listen to what she said in the probate court, and I want you guys to pay attention to this because Dorothy is going to speak, and you may have heard it before, but just listen to what Tierra says. And mind you, she did not appear in court.
Some disagreement between next and Kim on how the disposition of the deceased remains.
Her grandmother, Dorothy Latigue, filed this paperwork in probate court on Friday, asking the judge to hear the case. The grandmother said her only desire is to dispose of Kei'Mani's remains respectfully, but they can't bury the child because she and her mother are fighting over who has the right to plan the funeral.
To my understanding, we had a disagreement only because she felt like she wasn't invited to the ceremony, only because we have not kept in contact since the situation arose.
Police say Kei'Mani Latigue was murdered at the hands of her father, Darnell Jones. Her body found in this abandoned home. The community outraged. Her body moved from funeral home to funeral home. Judge Puffenberger saying this has gone on too long. He based his decision off of how close the women were to Kei'Mani and their plans for the funeral.
She's not just been in my house for the past 5.5 years. When she was with the prior custodian, we still kept contact to the point where Kei'Mani was still coming back and forth to my home.
Kei'Mani's mother told the court,
The last time that I was permitted to see my child was her 11th birthday. I would say that based off of the interactions that I've had with my daughter and the conversations that we had, I do believe we were close.
Ms. Latigue, I assume your daughter would be invited to the private family funeral.
And of course,
You would not try to exclude her.
no.
He asked how the grandmother would pay for the funeral.
Was there some community money donated for a funeral?
There were several organizations that are providing their services. So to date, again, everything is paid for.
The judge ruled in the grandmother's favor.
What I had planned was a private ceremony so that the family could attend, and we have a open casket funeral, and then there was a public ceremony also planned.
Now that we've gone over the updates about the arson investigation, including prosecutors saying evidence has been destroyed, the speculations about Kimani's mother not being forthcoming about the last time she saw Kei'Mani, and the questions surrounding the home ownership where Kimani's body was found, we're getting into a major development into this case. Prosecutors have now revealed what they believe may have been the motive based on the evidence they've gathered. This comes after the grand jury returned a 15-count indictment against Darnell Jones, which includes 4 alternative counts of aggravated murder, each carrying death penalty specifications. The 4 murder counts, they represent alternative theories, which, as I understand it, means prosecutors are presenting several possible ways the crime may have occurred based on the available evidence. Essentially, they are providing different scenarios that could explain the circumstances of Kimani's passing. Now, the Lucas County Prosecutor's Office says the death penalty specifications include felony murder during an escape, a crime driven by disturbing motives, and being classified as a violent predator. While execution in Ohio have been on hold for 4 years due to drug supply issues, prosecutors still feel this case is one where the death penalty is appropriate considering the severity of the crime. Please let me know below, what are your thoughts on this case? I have seen comments online where some people are 100% for the death penalty in this case, saying based on the egregious nature, the circumstances, the possibility of Darnell Jones potentially being her biological father, the fact that he attempted to dismember Kimani's body, that this case certainly is one that they would want the death penalty to be pursued for. However, I've seen comments where people have said no, they would prefer that he is in prison for the rest of his life. So please drop your thoughts below and let me know, what are your thoughts about this? Now, we know Darnell Jones has confessed to the crime, but what we don't know is if the SA was the motive, or if prosecutors are saying this is the only logical explanation based on his confession and the evidence they've pieced together.
Or there was a warrant for him and he was nowhere to be found, which is not true. Correct?
No, it's not. Darnell's been perfectly cooperative. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, when I was on my way down here, when I was on my way down here, because I got on the bus at like around 12 or whatever, like 12 in the afternoon. So I called him to let him know, like, hey, I'm on my way down there. I should be there by like 2. And he was already at the precinct. He said they had just, completely tore his house up, went through everything, searched everything. And then they brought him down to the precinct so that they could interrogate him. After they interrogated him, because they kept him down there for a long time. They took his phone. They asked him if he had cameras. He said, yes, in fact, we do. But they didn't ask for the camera footage. But he said, had they asked, he would have offered it up, no problem.
What about the?
But
They said
no,
that there was
they.
boots
I don't
covered in a
know
rug.
nothing about no damn boots. My baby daddy don't wear boots. I ain't never seen this man in a pair of boots in my entire life. About no damn boots. My baby daddy don't wear boots. I ain't never seen this man in a pair of boots in my entire life.
Dorothy, you might not have nothing to do with it, but you know what's going on. No, I don't.